Hey, I'm Nick West, and I want to talk to you about bass tone. A lot of people think that it is in the type of bass you have, the amplifier you have, the strings you have. Now, while all that is true, it's only 50%. So the equipment that you have is, in my opinion, 50% of your tone, because the other 50% comes directly from you. It comes from your fingers and the technique that you use on your bass to create that sweet spot. Now listen to this groove without any technique at all. You see how different it sounds? I'm going to show you what the difference is. So I'm using both of my hands to create this technique. I'm using my fretting hand as well as my picking hand. So with your fretting hand, you're actually going to mute the strings. How to mute the strings? You can use a string muter, or you can use your hand. I like to use a string muter and my hand to create a double effect. So you're going to mute your strings with your hand just by keeping your fingers just directly over the strings. You don't want to push in, you want to just kind of hold it there and just keep the strings from ringing. With your picking hand, you want to make sure that you are using a floating technique, meaning your fingers move down and mute the other strings as you're playing. So the strings that you're not playing, either your thumb comes down to mute them, or one of your other fingers mutes the rest of the strings while you're playing. Next, we're going to make sure that our picking hand is, instead of being on the neck pickup, move it down here toward the bridge pickup, because you get a completely different tone. Listen for the difference. Now let's move our hand from the neck pickup, not in the middle, not the neck pickup, not the middle, but all the way down as far as you can go on top of that bridge pickup. Next thing we're going to do is we're going to make sure that our picking hand, we are hitting the strings right on the really meaty part of the fingertips. So the tone is in your fingertips. What you're doing and where you're placing your fingertips on the strings is exactly how you're going to get a good tone versus a bad tone versus a okay tone. So make sure the meaty part is on the string. You want to make sure that you're not playing too hard. Instead, you want to glide on the string. So this is playing it too hard. Instead, glide. And the next thing we're going to do is we're going to throw in some ghost notes. So ghost notes are notes that are felt instead of heard. So for me, as a bass player, my ghost notes follow the hi-hats or follow whatever I would do in a fill. Watch my hands. So all of those notes that I'm playing that you don't actually hear, but you feel, it's more of a percussive thing that I do. So as a bass player, you got to think like a drummer. If you can think like a drummer, you're going to really be able to groove. So I'm going to play it again for you really slow. Watch my right hand. So what I mean by playing ghost notes where you would actually put a fill, what I'm doing on the first note is, so you hear that 1, 2, 3. So we can put a little fill right there where I'm just holding space with my fingers and the ghost notes. So being able to add in those ghost notes really changes the feel of the groove. So here's the groove without ghost notes. Now, when you add those ghost notes in there, it just feels funky, like it just feels so good. So you feel the difference? So ghost notes, adding in those ghost notes, it really helps with the tone in your fingers, because when you're playing those ghost notes, you're not letting any strings ring. You're not lifting up your fingers. Your fingers are on the strings at all times. So yes, get a great bass that's got great tone in it. Yes, get a great amp that has great tone in it. And yes, get a set of strings that has great tone in it. But the tone comes from you. The tone comes from your technique, your fingertips, and what you decide to do as far as muting the strings and playing that groove, adding those ghost notes in, and to keep it super, super tasty and super funky. Now go forth and have great tone.